All human life on this planet has one thing in common. Our teeming populations are split in two, one half male, the other half female. Just how similar and just how different are the human sexes? It's not easy for a man to get inside the head of a woman. So, during my television journey through the realms of human sex and gender, I must constantly be on my guard. I must try as hard as I can to be objective, balanced, and fair to both sexes. Above all, I must avoid any kind of emotional bias. I must present sexual relations as they really are, not as one extreme pressure group or another might wish them to be. Only if I do this can I provide a true scientific picture of what it is to be masculine or feminine.
Come on, let me catch up.
How many of the differences between the human male and the human female that we observe every day are rooted in their biology? How many are genetically inherited and how many are imposed by society? This mother is clearly improving on nature. But would her daughter, when she reached adulthood, become just as feminine without all this early training?
Hey, come here. Let me finish up. Come on, let's finish up. Close your eye. Close your eye. Close for just a second. How about for... No, don't rub it. Don't rub it.
Why do we encourage boys to express themselves through muscular power? Is this based on their biology or merely social tradition?
Just hold still.
Is this girl's mother exaggerating a biological feature or inventing a new one?
Mariah can't do it like this. You're not making this much fun.
Are these boys exaggerating natural male qualities, or are they behaving in a totally unnatural way? Watching these scenes with small boys made super masculine and small girls made super feminine, one can't help feeling that if only society would leave them alone, perhaps boys and girls would all behave in exactly the same way. Perhaps the differences we observe between the behavior of boys and girls, men and women, are all culturally imposed by older generations, with biology playing hardly any part. I know that in some circles this is the fashionable view, but I'm sure it's mistaken. The performance of this young girl may seem to be completely contrived and artificial, but it's not. It's merely an exaggeration, a dramatization of femininity, albeit at a very tender age. Clearly, society is imposing massive pressures on its members to emphasize their gender differences. So how can we strip off this cultural veneer to reveal the biological structure underneath? To understand how human gender differences first evolved, it helps to look at a group of modern people who are still pursuing the kind of tribal lifestyle that must have been enjoyed by our remote ancestors for tens of thousands of years. These are the Baka people of tropical West Africa, who even today display a primeval division of labor between the sexes. The role of the men is to hunt, to dismember the carcasses of the animals they kill, and to design and construct the hunting weapons. The role of the women is to rear the children, build the simple round huts, and gather vegetable foods. Although the bulk of the food eaten comes from the women's gathering activities, the meat provided by the men is of much higher nutritional value. Allowing for this difference, it's true to say that the contributions of males and females to tribal nutrition is roughly equal. This equality of importance in feeding is reflected in a gender equality in tribal matters generally. Decisions on male activities are made by the men, those on female matters by the women. It's almost certain that throughout our long evolutionary past, the human animal has thrived on this kind of natural balance of power between the sexes, rather than the domination of one sex by the other. To witness the legacy of this primeval division of labour, one only has to visit a modern holiday beach. There, the difference in the physique of human males and human females is clearly exposed to view. The athletic hunting of the primeval males has resulted in a larger, more muscular male body. The female body is specialised for childbearing. This primeval gender difference is even more obvious at sporting events, and nowhere is it more evident than at the traditional Highland Games held annually in Scotland. The most dramatic event is the uniquely Scottish obsession with tossing the caber, a 17-foot-long tree trunk that has to be thrown end over end. Only the most powerful of men can achieve this feat. Another dramatic demonstration of the brute strength of human males is the age-old tug of war. Conspicuous displays of masculine strength are not confined to muscular Scotsmen. All over the world, muscle-straining males can be found demonstrating their physical powers. Even here on the notoriously relaxed islands of the South Pacific, there are contests of male strength. On this particular island of Huahine, where the humidity is approaching 100%, there is an annual fruit-carrying contest which requires enormous muscular power. In Turkey, the men test their physical strength at the annual oil wrestling tournaments. Here, the contestants douse their bodies liberally with olive oil to make themselves more difficult to grasp. Each culture has its own version of male muscle display. These demonstrations are a constant reminder of the way in which evolution has improved the masculine body for its vital task in hunting prey animals. This specialization has given men bodies that are, on average, 30% stronger than those of women, with nearly twice the weight of muscular tissue. A typical female can only carry half her weight, whereas a typical male can carry twice his weight. Supporting this male muscle power, masculine bones, heart and lungs are bigger than their feminine equivalents. There's also a marked difference in the areas where fat is stored on the male and female body. Because of men's ancient role in stalking, chasing and killing prey, fat stores are restricted to those parts of the body that don't directly interfere with the walking, running or throwing of weapons needed for those activities. In men, fat stores are concentrated around the middle of the body, giving the typical male pot belly, rather than around the arms or legs. When modern urban males feel that their muscle-bound bodies are in need of a little assistance to compensate for their lack of exercise, they resort to many kinds of mutual aid, as here in the luxury of the classical Turkish bath. Women's ancient role, on the other hand, in gathering food and bearing children, means that their fatty deposits can be distributed more evenly over the whole body, including the limbs. This gives the female shape smoother, more rounded contours. Because of this gender difference, those parts of the body in which fat is stored by the female have become strong sexual signals. But it's not just the distribution of fat that differs between men and women. It's also the total amount of fat stored. At puberty, females have about twice as much fat as males. In adult men, the typical percentage of fat is 12%, whereas in adult women, it's 25%. This fact that women have a higher fat content to their bodies than men not only gives them a much more rounded shape, a more curvaceous body, but it also provides them with a human equivalent of a camel's hump. Just as a camel needs a hump of fat as a food store for times of deprivation, so the human female has a layer of fat distributed all over her body to give her greater resistance to periods of starvation, which is particularly important for the female, especially when she has young. So in that way, the female is superior to the male. A gruesome sideline of this comes from ancient Greece, when a writer stated, "For those whose job it is to burn bodies, it's advisable to remember that every 10th body should be that of a female, so that the fire will burn brighter." When certain females concentrate on developing their muscular strength, something strange starts to happen to their bodies. They become increasingly male in appearance and eventually even stop menstruating. Studies of successful female athletes have revealed that they somehow managed to reduce their body fat from the typical female level of 25% of their body weight down to the usual male level of only 12%. It has to be said that this is not biologically appropriate for the human female. And it's not surprising that such drastic changes start to interfere with the normal female physiology. Such women are a living testimony to two essential features of human gender. First, our sexuality is flexible. With intensive training, women can become amazingly masculine. Second, if women alter one feature of their sexuality, in this case their muscle-to-fat ratio, they can't help also changing in other ways. Contrast between the physique of these female bodybuilders who've driven themselves to the limit of muscular development and the physique of women who avoid this type of extreme athleticism is dramatic. These nightclub lap dancers, whose visual display requires that they should be super feminine, show instead the flexible, smoothly rounded shapes of the more typical female body, with not a single bulging muscle in sight. One of the more obvious qualities of the female body is its wider pelvis. This evolutionary adaptation to childbearing gives rise to differences in male and female body movements, and also in the postures we adopt in ordinary everyday life. The human pelvis doesn't just influence the way we walk or run, it also affects the way in which we sit down. There are 4 different kinds of leg crossing. There's the knee-knee cross, in which one knee goes on top of the other. There's the ankle-knee cross, in which the ankle goes on top of the knee. There's the ankle-ankle cross, like that, which is a more formal one. And then there's one that women can do and men find very hard. I can't even do it, which is to twine one leg right around the other, so this foot goes behind that. I can't do it. Some men can, but it's predominantly a female leg cross. Now, of these 4 kinds of leg crossing, this one is predominantly male, the twine is predominantly female, and the other 2 don't have any particular gender bias. Now, that's the theory, but what happens in practice? Let's look now at some leg crossing in benches all around here in Los Angeles to see whether, in fact, the gender bias really does exist. All we did was to ask people to sit down and cross their legs, but we didn't tell them how to cross them. Many of the women favoured the knee-knee cross, placing one knee on top of the other. Occasionally, there was an ankle-ankle cross, as here on the right. When men sat down and crossed their legs, they showed a much stronger preference for heaving an ankle up on top of a knee, the predicted male speciality, the ankle-knee cross. When we specifically asked both men and women to perform the leg twine with one foot wrapped around the back of the other leg, the women found it easy, but not the men.
Oh, that's hard.
This simple test revealed a body gender difference of which the men were not even aware.
What? Is this a joke?
Too fast. No.
It's not as good as I can do.
Sorry about that.
The human face has gender signals all of its own.
Now that's what we've found so far.
Right. That one's not too bad, but it had a little bit more of a fringe sort of coming down.
Okay.
It's a bit high.
Let's see what we can do to find some eyes that are about the right type.
A police investigation into the identity of the witness of a crime.
How's that?
Yeah, they're good.
Right.
Well, there's the face, and it's clear straight away that it's a male. We don't have to see the whole of a human body to be able to tell whether it's masculine or feminine. We can tell male and female, man and woman, just from this facial region. And there's a special reason for this. During the course of evolution, when males were specializing for hunting and females for gathering food, and that was a very, very long period of specialization, males developed bigger lungs than females because they were more athletic on the chase when they were pursuing prey. And these bigger lungs had to be fed more efficiently. There had to be better breathing for the males. And the result is that men have a much heavier nose than women. There's a bigger bridge here, a more prominent bridge, and wider nostrils. And that is one of the ways we tell a male face from a female face. Also, because of the danger when killing prey, there was more protection needed for the face. So you needed a heavier boned face, heavier jaws. A male jaw is bigger, the chin more protruding. And the eyes needed protection. The male eyes are more deeply set, with heavier brow ridges here, larger eyebrows on top as a result, and a more sloping forehead. All those elements go to make up what we think of as a male face. And it's not accidental, it's part of our evolution. Where men are not clean-shaven, there is, of course, a much more obvious facial difference. This man has one of the longest moustaches in the world. This amazing growth vividly demonstrates one of the key signals of the human male, his facial hair display. In primeval times, this must have been the most conspicuous of all the various body signals of masculinity. It appears to have provided no special benefit to a man as a hunter and seems to have been merely a visual gender feature, a sign saying, even at a great distance, I am an adult male. Another basic gender signal is the deeper male voice. The frightening impact of this Finnish shouting choir leaves little doubt as to the significance of a group of powerful male voices in primeval times. Unlike the males, the primeval females retained the same high pitch as the juveniles of the tribe. This had its own special advantage. By making juvenile sounds even as adults, the females were better able to stimulate the protective responses of their males. If a deep voice advertises that a male has become adult, what are the female equivalents? One of the most conspicuous of all female gender signals is the pair of hemispherical breasts that start to protrude from her chest as soon as she reaches puberty.
The human female breast is an important sexual signal. Now, some people think that it's simply a milk-producing device and that male interest in it is infantile. This isn't the case because only 1/3 of the tissue of the breast is concerned with milk production. 2/3 of it is simply fatty tissue which gives it its shape but has nothing to do with milk production. And it's this shape that is the important sexual signal. In the case of a chimpanzee, when it's giving milk, it does have a rounded breast. But when it's not giving milk, it has a flat chest. Now, that doesn't happen with adult human beings. The adult human female retains the rounded shape to the breast throughout her fecundity period. Now, that hemispherical shape, therefore, has nothing to do with maternal behavior and everything to do with sexual signaling.
And in the unlikely event that you doubt the sexual impact of female breasts on watching male eyes, all you need to do is to visit New Orleans at Mardi Gras and observe how young women there coax the local men into showering them with traditional gifts in the shape of bead necklaces. So much for the physical differences between men and women. But what about their mental differences? Do men and women think differently?
We know that back in primeval times there was a division of labour between the sexes. And it seems highly likely that during the course of evolution this affected the way in which the male and female brains worked. These are the mountains that separate France from Spain. And it's here in the Pyrenees that there's a cave just over there where we can get a vivid glimpse of what it was like for our ancient ancestors back in the Ice Age when the roles of male and female were so very different.
This is the famous cave of Neo, and deep inside here there's a special cul-de-sac where there are over 100 animal figures that were painted on the walls about 11,000 years ago.
Well, this is the Salon Noir, and this is where the cave paintings are. I can't see any yet. There's nothing up there, but... look at this lovely bison. So beautifully drawn, the proportions so accurate. And this is interesting because, look, on the flank of the bison, there's a sign indicating what looks like a spear, suggesting that that's where the animal was speared. There's another one, and down here, now there are 2 spears on the side of this one. So that animal was well and truly killed. Oh, and here's a little ibex. Now, this one is a very dead ibex because it's got a long spear sticking into its back, and then 2 more sticking into its chest. Many people seem to think that these portrayals are of live animals, but they're not. All these animals were dead when they were portrayed. These were commemorations of animals that had been killed in the hunt, not ones that were going to be killed. And there's a proof of this when you look at the feet. See these feet here? Any zoologist would tell you that those are not the feet of a standing animal. That animal's lying on its side. There's no weight on those feet. And so each of these pictures is like a monument to the animal that was killed by those prehistoric hunters. And of course, they're huge animals. And it must have been a daunting prospect for the prehistoric hunters back in the Ice Age when they set off on the pursuit of prey.
With the males concentrating on hunting and the females gathering food and performing many other social activities, the male brain gradually became specialized in focusing on single-minded, long-term pursuits, while women became skilled at thinking about many things at once. Men became better at visual spatial skills of the kind needed to track down prey, while women became better at verbal skills. Perhaps this explains why men are better map readers than women, and why they use a different method to find their way through a maze. There's a marked difference in the way that men and women navigate. Men remember routes by imagining maps in their head, mental maps with directions and distances, whereas women learn their way around by remembering landmarks. If in navigation experiments, men and women are asked to learn a route from A to B, women can be thrown off course by removing landmarks, which hardly affects the men, while men are thrown off course simply by changing the distances between the turnings. Perhaps this difference is also the reason why men are better at technical drawings than women. This mixed class was asked to perform the seemingly simple task of drawing a bicycle from memory. The results showed a marked gender difference. First, here are the attempts by the girls. And here are the efforts by the boys. With this test, at least, the superiority of male visual spatial skills seems to be confirmed. There are a number of popular activities today where males appear to be in the majority, although there's nothing to stop females from taking part. Both sexes do, of course, enjoy playing board games, but men seem to take them more seriously and spend more time at them. What do these activities all have in common, and what does this tell us about the male brain? Men seem to enjoy devising strategies and engaging in the complex planning for which the game of chess is famous. At the serious competitive level of chess, more than 98% of the players are males. All this seems to relate back to the masculine specializations needed for primeval hunting. Women, who were once much more in the centre of human society than men, are better at organising by discussing problems with one another. Women are better at dealing verbally with people. Men are better at dealing silently with things. How many women are there, for instance, who'd retreat to their attics to play for hour after hour with miniature trains? The primeval male predisposition to plan complicated hunting strategies has been transformed into many unusual modern pursuits. Activities having no survival value in themselves, but symbolically providing the men involved with the deep satisfaction of fulfilling ancient inborn urges.
Signal 18 and signal 7.
Risk-taking is another area of behaviour where men differ from women. How many women would wish to use their spare time bungee jumping while sitting at the wheel of their car? The male urge to take unnecessary risks is reflected in the fact that throughout life, women are less likely than men to die from an accident. By the age of 30 in some countries, males are 15 times more likely to die of an accident than females. Biologically, male risk-taking makes sense. During the course of evolution, males have always been more expendable than females. And in addition, the primeval male specialization for hunting also meant that a risk-taking masculine personality was increasingly useful. Another primeval male specialization is a tendency to display powerful group allegiance. Male hunting parties needed this quality, and today its legacy sometimes surfaces in extremely odd behaviour. Assemble men in a small group with a common aim, and they can be made to do almost anything. Even parade down a public street covered from head to toe in silver paint, like these students taking part in a political rally. This is the kind of activity that has little appeal for women. A female group would first want to discuss it at length and would then, no doubt, wisely decide against it. The masculine urge to belong to a special group means that, given firm leadership, men are easier to train than women. They can even be made to do quite preposterous things, such as eating their meals with bananas balanced on their heads.
Everybody, banana on your head. Move! Commence! Eating!
At this level, male compliance is harmless enough, but sadly, it's this same acceptance of group orders that can lead to the horrors of warfare. War is more the result of male group cooperation than of male aggression. The soldier kills more to conform and to support his buddies than because of his personal hatred for the enemy. This quality of group obedience and the acceptance of punishment is both a great masculine strength and an even greater masculine weakness.
Right, everybody, I will give you 10 counts to consume your meals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop eating.
In case you wondered, these are trainee security guards in a Filipino shopping centre. The bananas on their heads are supposedly to keep their backs straight, but perhaps more importantly, to prove that they'll do almost anything if given a specific order. In general, males cooperate in groups by forming a clear line of command and a strict hierarchy, while females are far more egalitarian. Studies of the human brain have confirmed that men and women do indeed think differently. They don't always use the same thought processes. Brain scans reveal that different parts of the male and female brain are used when performing the same task.
Are you writing there? We're just about to start, Scott.
Here, a male is about to be given verbal tests in which he'll have to identify word sounds. The precise nature of the tests isn't important. What is important is that they're verbal tests and will activate the part of his brain that's involved in solving verbal problems. The active parts of his brain show up in yellow and red. It's immediately clear that he's only using one side of his brain. It's the left hemisphere that's active in the frontal region. Now, what happens when the test is repeated with a woman? Which parts of her brain will be activated when she undertakes an identical verbal task? Clearly, her brain is working in a very different way. Both hemispheres show bright patches. So where language is concerned, a woman uses her right hemisphere as well as her left. In men, the right hemisphere is reserved more for dealing with spatial problems. This helps to explain why women are generally better at verbal communication and why men are better at visual spatial tasks. The superior verbal abilities of the human female reveal themselves at an early age. Female infants babble more than male infants, and young girls use two-word sentences earlier and have larger vocabularies than boys of the same age. At school, girls beat boys at spelling and punctuation and are much better at remembering the details of a story. All of this is no doubt part of the primeval specialization of the human female as a caring, communicative mother. The love of some animals, such as horses, shows a dramatic increase in girls just as they're about to reach puberty. And this is something that doesn't happen with boys.
He's a good boy, Trigger. A good boy to do, Trigger. Yes, you are.
A careful investigation revealed that at its peak, just before the teenage phase, the love of horses rises to become 3 times stronger in girls compared with boys. This suggests a difference in the psychology of young girls, with a greater emphasis both on caring and on an attachment to a larger, more powerful companion. It could be argued that the horses, by virtue of their muscular strength, represent a male element in the lives of the soon-to-be sexually active young women. Turning to the subject of sense organs, recent experiments have proved that there's a slight difference in sensory ability between men and women. For instance, women have a better sense of smell. In evolutionary terms, this probably has to do with the fact that women are more finely tuned to the personal fragrance of their babies, a specialisation which makes them more sensitive mothers. There's only a slight difference in ability, but it's a significant one, and in certain professions it ought to be quite important.
Non, ça va donner.
Since wine tasting is in reality more a matter of smelling than tasting, it follows that this might be an area where women are more sensitive than men. Certainly these particular women at the Château Violet in the south of France appear to be very finely tuned to their work and run their own vineyard. But just how typical are they? How many women are employed in the wine industry today?
Ça va, il est bien doux et pas acide. C'est bon.
Here in the south of France, where the production of fine wines is a way of life, you might expect to find that all the great wine experts, the people who sniff the delicate fragrance of the new wine to test its quality, you'd expect them all to be women, because after all, women have a better sense of smell. And yet, the wine trade is still dominated by male noses, as they're called. Why should this be? Well, you have to turn the clock right back to find the answer, because in medieval times it was believed that if a woman entered a wine cellar, she would turn all the wine sour, that her very presence there would make the wine go bad, and so women were forbidden to go into wine cellars of this kind. Even today, in a few of the wine cellars, that is still the case. So it remains very much a male-dominated activity. Perhaps in the future, science will defeat superstition and women will at last find their true place in this age-old profession.
A well-known way in which the sexes differ is that women live longer than men. In the Western world, the average is about 7 years. Now, nothing could symbolize this difference better than the event that's about to take place in the building behind me. This is the town hall in Arles, in the south of France, where this afternoon the oldest person in the world, in fact the oldest person, as far as we know, who's ever lived in the history of the human species, is going to celebrate her 121st birthday.
Madame Jeanne Calment was born here in 1875, and her life spans the whole history of our modern world.
Madame Meusy, tout le personnel de la maison de retraite, tout le personnel de l'hôpital d'Arles.
When asked the secret of her long life, she explained, "I keep calm. That's why I'm called Calment." She wasn't persuaded to give up drinking port and smoking until she was 117. But amazingly, she's never had a single day's illness in her entire life.
Vous êtes devant les photographes. Non, vous êtes dans la grande salle du bas. Comment vous sentez-vous pour votre anniversaire?
Très bien, en forme.
Vous avez fait beaucoup de sport?
Ah, beaucoup. Comme marche, beaucoup de marche. D'excursion très haute.
Her forceful personality has survived the passage of time, and her memory remains clear. Even today, she recalls seeing the Eiffel Tower being built when she paid a visit to Paris. But perhaps Madame Calment's most astonishing memory is of an event that took place just round the corner here in Arles when she was a teenager serving in her father's shop. It was back in 1888. And it was in that shop that she actually served paints
to none other than Vincent van Gogh, who was working here in Arles at the time. She remembers him very well because he was ugly as sin, evil-tempered and smelt of booze. She didn't care for him at all. Madame Calment does really epitomize the longevity of the human female. But why should women live longer than men? Is it really biological, or is it perhaps cultural? Well, if you look back at the history of it, you find that before the present century, women did, in fact, live shorter lives than men. In fact, if you go back to prehistoric times, you find that then men lived 20% longer than women. And in the Middle Ages, right up to about the 18th or 19th century, you found that men were living about 7 or 8 years longer than women. And then, at the beginning of this century, it all changed. Suddenly, women were outliving men. Now, why did it change at the beginning of this century? Clearly, it's not purely biological. There must be some cultural factors at work as well. But how much is it biological, and how much is it cultural? The problem with comparisons between males and females is that their lifestyles usually show such marked contrasts. The only way to find out if there really is a biological difference in lifespan is to look for an environment where health factors and social pressures are the same for both sexes. This isn't easy, but it's possible to come very close to it in the cloistered world of monasteries and nunneries, where the monks and nuns live under almost identical social conditions. There's no smoking, no drinking, no sex, no stress, same food, same fixed routines, and yet here, when the records of 40,000 inmates were examined, it emerged that there was still a significant difference in life expectancy, with the nuns outliving the monks on average by about 5 years. So there is, after all, a true biological difference between the sexes in this respect. What possible reason could there be for this? The evolutionary explanation of this difference in longevity would appear to be that grandmothers are more important than grandfathers. The significance of the grandparental role of older females has often been underestimated in recent years with our fragmented societies. But in ancient tribal communities, grandmothers must have been extremely important in helping their daughters with the heavy burden of maternal care. Of course, grandfathers also had a role to play. But the 5 extra years allotted to the elderly human female by evolution suggest that the elderly male was never quite as important as she was. These, then, are some of the major biological differences between men and women. Some are direct sexual signals, identifying males as males and females as females. Others can be explained by referring back to the primeval division of labour that developed in our species, with males hunting and females gathering, with males designed for speed and for strength, and women for stamina and for maternity. Combined together, these varying pressures have moulded our bodies and created the adult human male and female forms as they are today. But having said this, it must be admitted that culture and human social custom have repeatedly interfered with these biological gender qualities. At different times and in different epochs, each element of the male and female body and human behaviour has been modified in some way, either by wildly exaggerating a small difference or by trying to suppress it. All too often, these superficial developments have overshadowed our true biological characteristics and left the impression that perhaps after all, if the cultural variations were removed, we'd all prove to be the same, with little or no male-female distinction. I think it's clear that from the evidence I presented, this isn't the case, and that man and woman are,
in a number of significant ways, rather different. It can't be said too often of the human sexes. They are different but equal. Equal but different. Nothing epitomizes this difference and equality more vividly than when a man and a woman go rock climbing together. Men may be stronger and taller than women, but women have greater manual dexterity and more precise control of their arms and hands. Men may be more muscular, but women are more flexible and can find footholds that men can't reach. So, a male and a female climbing as a pair complement one another perfectly and provide a fitting metaphor for the different but equal sexuality of the human species.